are listening to Let's Talk Sustainable Business.
Hello, my name is Uwe Schulte, and it's a pleasure to welcome you in this podcast in our series Let's Talk Sustainable Business. It's brought to you by the Conference Board Global Sustainability Center. Today, I will be talking to Emilio Tenuta from Ecolab about water, the new oil. But before we get started, as we're recording this podcast during the COVID-19 crisis, we would like to express our solidarity with all suffering in this crisis and express our gratitude to all supporting those in need. First, let me introduce our guest to you. Emilio Tenuta is the Chief Sustainability Officer at Ecolab. Emilio has an MBA in General Management from Kellogg School of Management, and prior to Ecolab, he worked in their subsidiary, Nalco, a world-leading water treatment company. So welcome, Emilio, and please tell us a little bit about yourself and your role at Ecolab.
Sure, and thanks for having me today. A little bit about myself. I have 36 years of industry experience in water and energy, as you said, starting from Nalco Water, which is now merged with Ecolab. And I guess I've got to start with my passion around sustainability. Probably dates back to the time that I spent in southern Italy. I'm first generation Italian American, and I recall times in Calabria, southern Italy, where I worked with my grandfather on his local farm. And before I knew the relevance of what water management was or soil management, he really instilled in me the importance of the role that Mother Nature has to the livelihood of society and the environment. So that really I think has instilled in me what I do today, which is at Ecolab, I have been leading sustainability for the last 10 years for the company, 36 years in total with the company, and my origin is from working within the business to really drive impact through our customers. Now, Ecolab started back in 1923 with one product called a sorbate, which was used to clean carpets within, hotels, and it without taking the actual carpet out of the room. So today we say that reduced the energy and carbon emissions that was considered today a sustainable product. But back then, obviously, they didn't think that way. And so our business model really allows customers to work more efficiently around saving money and natural resources. And since 2000, we have had very ambitious goals around sustainability, and we've always met and exceeded them. Now, we're proud to say that next month we're launching more ambitious set of goals, and these are called our 2030 impact goals. And we always start with the impact where we have the greatest leverage, which is through our customers, in terms of helping them achieve 300 billion gallons of water savings, equivalent to the drinking water needs of a billion people, or helping them, become more carbon neutral. Obviously, that water savings comes with thermal energy savings because you have to pump, treat, cool, and heat that water. And so we have a climate impact as well as a water impact around the world, besides the business objectives that we help our customers achieve by leveraging some of our solutions. So my role really, as you can tell from my summary here, is really driven first and foremost through the work that we do through our customers. But we also have done an incredible amount of work to drive corporate responsibility and environmental management within our own operations. We have about 100 facilities around the world, and I lead the efforts around establishing these targets, goals, and ensuring that we achieve these goals with the right stewardship practices around the world. So a little bit more about who I am, Uwe. Thank you. Thanks for having us.
No, thank you, Emilio, and that's quite an impressive background. But before we get into our subject, As you are a business to business company, some of our listeners might actually not know exactly what Ecolab does today. You just touched on it a little bit, but maybe you can just very briefly
Mhm.
summarize what you're up to.
Well, yeah. So people may know of Ecolab or seen the brand from hand sanitizers and hand washing stations in restaurants, sports arenas, and other public venues. But we do a lot more than that. There's really very little of the economy that we don't touch in terms of industries. In broad terms, our business is water, climate, hygiene, and infection prevention solutions and services. So we employ about, 45,000 people around the world. Our annual revenues are about 13 billion. We serve, 3 million customer locations in more than 170 countries. you know, the products and services range from a number of different areas, from huge cooling systems within power stations or automotive assembly plants that require, management of water, energy, and also efficient business processes, to dish machines and cleaning products at your local restaurant in your neighborhood. So along the way, what we in working with our customers, as you look at our reach and impact in 2019, just to put this in perspective, we helped save 206 billion gallons of water toward that 300 billion gallon goal by 2030, equivalent to the annual drinking water needs of 712 million people. So when you look at that, along with that comes the energy efficiency, because water is connected to energy, and the avoided greenhouse gas emissions. So oftentimes we refer to this as the exponential return on investment in working with us at Ecolab. And this is also, focused not only on saving critical resources like water, energy, carbon, and materials, but also being more productive and from a time perspective, reducing costs and other things. So as you can tell, we have a wide net that we cast when you look at the impact we have in the world.
I don't want to put you on the spot because as a European, I wonder how many liters that are, but there you are. We'll work out that separately. It's a large number, and you related it to the drinking water requirement. So let's start with our subject of today, water, the new oil. We didn't choose that because, as we all know, oil is pretty cheap at the moment, but because water is extremely valuable, and today more than ever. And where do you see the reasons for that, Emilio?
Well, I mean, when most people think of oil, they think of something that's rare and expensive. I mean, when they think of water, on the other hand, they think of something that's, you know, plentiful, available, and cheap. But the reality is, water is precious and scarce, and all water we have on this earth is already here. There's no new water. And if you look at, many of us learn from our from our grade school learnings that 70% of the world is covered in water, but most of it's salt water. And so there's just of the 2.5% of fresh water, there's just a small fraction of fresh water available for society on this earth that's usable fresh water. Mostly in rivers, lakes, and of course we have a disappearing groundwater source as well. But you wouldn't know that today, because today water is underpriced, and it's often cheapest in the places where it's the scarcest, right? And so, we work with organizations like Global Water Intelligence that does a great job of tariff surveys on water, fresh water, and combined water in and out costs in 2017, as an example, for a place like Amsterdam, probably not far from where you are now, you're looking at about $6.25 per cubic meter in an area that's has considered to not be water stressed. While you look at places like Sao Paulo in Brazil, or maybe Mumbai. In Sao Paulo, where you do have water stress, it's significantly cheaper. It's about $1.35 per cubic meter. Mumbai, which is extremely water stressed, it's about 30 cents in and out per cubic meter. And so you have this inverse relationship that we see where, the water stress and what individuals and water users pay for water it has that inverse relationship, which doesn't make a lot of sense. And so to know the real value of water, you have to look at it in terms of, increased water costs and the impact that has as water becomes scarcer, operational risks, regulatory, of course, reputational impacts, societal unrest that comes from water stress conditions. So to know what water is worth to your business, you really have to be able to monetize those risks in terms of dollars, or put it in business terms so that water users around the world can actually take action on those type of metrics. So often we have worked with a number of stakeholders to really think about how one could monetize those risks. And in 2014, about 6 years ago, we developed and designed a free online tool to do this for locations at an operational level called the Water Risk Monetizer. It's a free, publicly available tool. We're on version 3 and actually working on version 4 that will be released in 2021. And what's unique about it is, again, is being able to understand that if water is undervalued, no matter where you're operating around the world, you can actually use this tool to monetize those risk factors in business terms and actually, arm you with the information you need to take action.
Now that I think we should actually put the link to that into the commentary. I'll make sure that we do that. Um, and by the way, I lived through water stress in Sao Paulo when I was living with my family there. I know what it means. And according to the World Resource Institute, already in 2006, 1 billion people lived in water scarce regions. And the estimate is that by 2025, it will be more than 3 billion. And the Water Scarcity Atlas quotes even higher numbers. Uh, in your mind, not in your mind, sorry, from your experience, where are the regions that are most affected by water scarcity?
Sure. So when people think water, we think about water in developing countries, and that's where the problem is. That's where people perceive the problem. They think of places like Mumbai or Saudi Arabia, and that's not accurate, because water scarcity is really the new normal, not just in developing countries, but also in developed countries, right? So if we continue on the current path, and WRI has done some incredible work updating the statistics around the supply-demand gap, but the latest numbers are that the demand for fresh water will outstrip supply by greater than 50% by 2030. Now that's just, that's less than 10 years away. So as you mentioned, 2 billion people already live in areas that are affected by water stress, and the figure is projected to increase. So today, according to the UN, 1 out of every 9 people, almost 850 million people, has no access to basic drinking water. So water access alone, and of course, think about the impact that has during a pandemic, which is what we're in now, where water is critical to being able to maintain the necessary hygiene, to be able to wash your hands, to avoid these type of infections. So this is happening everywhere. And you mentioned Sao Paulo. You remember the day zero back in 2015. We came within days of running dry.
Yes.
Or Cape Town, which was not that long ago, or Chennai last year, where you had, a significant portion of the population, nearly 4 million people, that had to access their water from water trucks. So this is, again, a becoming a really acute situation, and in high income economies, they're not immune to this. As you pointed out, in European cities, like London and Brussels, they have faced Spain, they have faced water issues, um, droughts and wildfires in Australia that we heard about last year, and the same for California and Texas. But in other words, water is increasingly scarce and valuable, and we shouldn't just treat it as a disposable liability. It really needs to be viewed as a valued asset.
Yeah. You know, I live in Germany these days, and we have now 2 years where the agricultural yield was so low because of droughts in Germany. Never heard of before. But what what are the main reasons for this? What is happening?
Well, in very simple terms, demand is outpacing supply. I mean, we have a growing population. Think about this. In 1950, we had 2.5 billion people on this earth. Today, we have 7.2 billion. By 2050, we'll have almost 10 billion. So that's one really major factor toward this issue. And another is economic growth. More and more, millions of individuals have joined the middle class and will continue to grow. That will continue to grow, especially in Asia. And then, of course, you have the impact of climate. Um, there would be water scarcity even without climate change, but climate change is really worsening this issue. And so, for one of the things that we often talk about is the connection between climate and water. In many ways, the first chapter of our story on climate should be about water because we're largely seeing the effects of climate through the challenges around water, whether it be extreme weather events, droughts, floods, and other factors. So here's the way we think about it as in terms of what this means to business and industry, which is something that Ecolab is on the front line, working with customers every day. So according to UNESCO, industry uses about 20% of all fresh water. We've heard that statistic, I think, over the years. However, in high-income countries, notably in Europe, industry accounts for up to 59% of total water use. So that's a really big jump and a significant factor in terms of how we need to look at managing water within an economy. As low-income countries industrialize, their water usage trends will continue to rise, just like they have in the developed countries. So after 2011, overall corporate water use, and we've done a lot of work around this with a number of organizations, CDP and others, water use fell by 10%. But in recent years, it has increased. Since 2015, according to S&P TrueCost, it's been trending up again. And according to CDP, there was an almost 50% rise in the number of companies reporting higher water withdrawals in 2018. So, we kind of have a good news, bad news story. The good news is that more and more companies are setting targets and identifying risks related to water. The problem is we're not seeing that action at the local level.
Yeah, we've now talked about climate change and population growth. I see another factor, which is or other factors, pollution and also unsustainable consumption. Isn't that something that we should be concerned about as well?
Yeah, I want to be cautious about overemphasizing consumption because it's true that we can be better and more conscientious about how we consume water and how much and how we produce the goods and services from an efficiency and conservation perspective. I just want to make sure that you can actually manage water in a way that doesn't compromise the quality of life. If we do this right, do the right things and do them quickly, because obviously time is a factor here, we can build an economy that ensures high quality of life for all, enough clean water for all, and a thriving natural environment. So the ecosystem, which is so critical to impacting the first two things I mentioned. Now, does that mean that every person can live the exact same way? as say a typical American does today, which, we're known for a higher consumption of water, relatively speaking, to other economies. No, we have to redesign a number of systems and rethink the way we manage water for sure. But the idea that we will have to give up, automobiles or refrigerators or, protein sources or those consumption things that we enjoy today, that's I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think we just need to really, really what I call shore up the execution gap now around what the challenges are and what needs to be done to set the right targets and the action that needs to happen at the local level that leads to smart water management, which is key.
Yeah, I'm still struggling a little bit with the pollution issue. Isn't that something that
It it
depends on where you are?
it is well. It okay. So water water quality. When you talk about physical risk, it's about quantity and quality. We spend a lot of
Mm.
time today talking about quantity. And, the UN has identified that 80% of the water in the world today is discharged untreated, right? And so that's a problem. And so water quality is impacting the way we manage and water for organizations and society at large. Here's the challenge. The challenge is that with this gap by 2030 of over 50% from a freshwater supply and demand, there are opportunities for us to take that water that's being discharged untreated and to begin to rethink that as a opportunity to reuse and recycle that water. And today, you know, less than 3% of all global wastewater is actually reclaimed and reused. And that must change. So that serves two purposes. One is to improve the water quality that is being ultimately discharged, but two, that we have an opportunity to take that water and actually repurpose it because very little of it is being repurposed today. And what instead is happening is we're using fresh water in lieu of that. And so I think that, there is a connection between water, climate, and pollution. The more water we use, the more energy we use, the more energy you use, the more carbon you emit, and the more that impacts the climate situation and dilemma we're in. So to me, I think all of these factors and water quality has a role in this in terms of how we can get after the issues of discharge quality problems by being able to reclaim and reuse that water and make it fit for use back into the economy.
Yeah, that's encouraging. Unfortunately, we're running out of time in this podcast, and I would really like to hear more about what can be done and what needs to be done, and how can business make a contribution to solving the problem. And we will do that in the next podcast. Can you just give a couple of highlights what we're going to talk about then, so that our listeners get a little bit of appetite to listen to the next one as well?
Sure. So I think what we'll talk a little bit about is where we are today. Let's fast forward to what's happening during now that we're in a pandemic. How does this impact the way we think about water, sustainability, and climate? And also some of the actions that can be taken to really get ahead of this opportunity to really, value water in a way that actually action can be taken at the local level. And so I'm looking forward to that discussion in the next section.
Excellent. And I would like to explore also that climate aspect a little bit more, because I learned today that there is more connection between climate and water than in my simple mind I had been envisaging before. So thank you very much, Emilio, for sharing your insights into this global problem. Um, and it might sound a bit depressing by adding more issues on top of the COVID-19 crisis that we're currently facing. So I'm glad that you've already indicated some perspective on possible solutions, and we will talk about them more in the next podcast. So thanks for sharing that.
Sounds great.
Okay. If you've enjoyed this episode, please remember to subscribe to our podcast series or explore the entire catalog of podcast programmings from the Conference Board by visiting our website at tcb.org/podcasts. And dear listeners, we appreciate very much your feedback and suggestions for subjects to be covered. And you can reach us via email. Just send it to sustainability@conferenceboard.org. Thank you very much, and goodbye for today.
That was Let's Talk Sustainable Business.